Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Rareminds podcast, which this month we are tying in with the theme of World Mental Health Day and its focus on mental health in the workplace. So this episode is all about the mental well-being of rare leaders, i.e. those who run small patient organisations that often provide the backbone of support to those living with the impact of a rare condition. I was going to be having two lovely guests today, but one of my guests, who runs a small organisation, has very wisely decided to step back to look after her physical and mental well-being, as she's sadly not. When combined with lived experience, can be an extraordinary force for good for rare communities. But this combination can bring particular challenges and pressures too, which can over time also have implications for mental health and emotional well-being. And therefore how important it is as a rare leader to be creative and determined about looking after your own mental well-being as a leader too. Sam has extensive experience in the wider charity and voluntary sector in various roles as trustee, chair, and is also a fellow of the RSA. Her interest in rare conditions started with the role of interim CEO at the Batten Disease Family Association, and she is now CEO of Gene People, who provide a partnership network for patient organisations as well as a genetic counsellor helpline.
Thank you for that introduction. For those, if I might, who don't know Gene People, we do three things, and I think the second is most pertinent for this conversation. We provide advice and support for people who have a rare genetic condition and everyone around them, and we also provide services and support to patient organisations, or as we call them, condition-specific support groups. And we tend to focus on the smaller side of the scale. And the support we give is things like webinars on our symposium and discounts. We try and leverage discounts. And then we do advocacy and collaboration. But I'm really pleased to join you today to talk about this really, really, and increasingly so, important topic.
So Sam, you bring a really interesting perspective to the rare space because you have a lot of experience both outside the rare sector but also within it too, and that close involvement you've had with rare leaders and patient organisations. So I was really interested to know what you think makes rare leadership a little bit unique and different. I have some thoughts about that, but I'm really interested from your perspective too.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting one, and I would just like to start this off with, I think that every organisation across the charitable sector, whether you're a formalised charity or whether you're an informal voluntary group, at the moment is being, I can't think of a more eloquent word than clobbered at the moment, because the demand for everyone's services are through the roof and the funding is off the edge of a cliff. And I fundraised in a recession before, and it's hard, and this is harder. And I think also it's really important to position the conversation that we're having today in and I'm not going to say post-pandemic, because for a lot of our communities, as you'll know, Kym, they're still living the pandemic. It's still a very, very constant and present threat to their livelihoods and their well-being. So in this post-lockdown world, where more people are at home, more organisations are remote, having made bold decisions during the pandemic lockdowns, and that there's an increasing isolation, and that is very pertinent to lots of different charity leaders. So I just want to think about those two things, about that macro environment that we're living in as rare leaders. You know, it's bad for all charities. And there's also huge societal shifts where we've changed from in the office most of the time to, a lot of us are working remotely most of the time, particularly in our space. And I've been reflecting what makes a rare leader different to other charity leaders, whether that's, and I'm going to use charity as a shorthand, whether it's not constituted and registered with the Charity Commission or a registered charity.
Yeah, so what patient group? Yeah,
it's a patient group. Yeah, what makes us different? And I think it's that because in the rare space you're mostly talking about smaller organisations. Because when you start to build a charity, a patient organisation, you're looking to your community. And if you only have 100 people worldwide with your condition, let's face it, your fundraising ability is going to be quite limited. Also, what you actually need to provide to people is going to be more ring-fenced, more bound into exactly what they want, because you'll be able to speak to them all. You'll know them all. And I know that from personal experience. I knew the names of every single Batten disease child that when I was there, and I could tell you all about them, every single one. It's 150 when I was there. So, you know, and you just do know your community really well. But the expectations, as soon as you say, I lead the whatever it is group, is that we have the same kind of infrastructure, same kind of funding, same kinds of service offer as a megalith, like a Cancer Research UK. Why isn't the helpline 24/7?
Yeah, so
And
those
Sundays, etc. It's that expectation management.
Yeah, those pressures are so much higher, aren't they, on small organisations? And I notice that with Rareminds too, that the idea that we are much bigger, much more well resourced or funded than we are, and of course that's the same for so many small rare organisations. And I think there's a really distinct response that rare leaders have to that, which is something to do with the level of disappointment that they may have come up against in living with their rare condition and trying to find help for it and trying to find support and not feeling that people were necessarily listening or there, particularly, you know, en route to diagnosis, but often after that too. And I often think it's that desire not to disappoint that really can drive rare leaders sort of above and beyond. And it can be a very mobilizing quality, but it can also trip you up too, because I think it can be so easy then to override your own personal well-being needs or your family's needs, to sort of go the extra mile, which can be very rewarding, you know, to sort of meet someone's need, be the person that you needed someone to be for you, for someone else. But it can come at such cost as well, I think, too. And perhaps compounded by those close relationships that form in small organisations too. Do you recognise something?
I do. So one of the things that we do is we make it very clear that certain things that we do are in response to bad experiences that we know that the community has done. So for example, the helpline is not a live helpline. You don't ring up and get through to a person. That's on purpose. And it's on purpose because half of the people that ring us are contacting us about a disease that will have only ever been spoken to about once. And that's quite a burden. That's quite a challenge to.
That's a lot for your counsellor, your genetic counsellor, to be
on top of
processing right in the moment of that call.
So we don't want to. We all know that one of the things that our community says is, I went to the GP and they Googled it in front of me. We're never going to do that. We're going to do our research up front before we have that conversation. So ring us, leave your name, leave your number, tell us what condition you're interested in. We'll do all of the research and then we'll come back to you. Because we never want to replicate it. And yes, it is that, be the person that you wish you had found, because let's face it, most of the organisations that are set up, I always say, founded by hope, funded by love. Absolutely stand by that. You know, it's that hope of bringing people together and creating change and making sure that other families don't go through what you've gone through, and also maybe research for treatments or cures or whatever, and also it's funded by love, because we are talking about charitable donations, and at the end of the day every donation is a gift. So yes, it is that really making sure that you don't disappoint people. But I think that means that as a rare leader you need to put in those boundaries and be really clear about what you can and cannot offer and what you might be able to offer in partnership. And I think it's just being, I think that clarity is really important.
And it's so hard, isn't it? Because I've had lots of training as a therapist in managing boundaries and managing expectations, but there can be such a strong pull when you are involved with those that you are very committed to, that you might care very deeply about, sort of, even though you might have that inner sort of like, oh, I'm not sure this is a good idea, or can we really do this? Do we have the resources to do this? That so often, when we talk to rare leaders, I hear that desire, that passion and that desire to do something that would be genuinely helpful and supportive for their community, either as an individual or an organisation. But they may just not have quite the capacity to do at that moment in time. And how painful and hard it is to say, oh, this is a great idea, but I'm not sure we're in a position to, I'm not sure I'm in a position to right now. Because that's the boundary, isn't it? But it means we have to go, oh, everything in us is wanting to do it. And we have to say no to look after either our own well-being or the organisation or the support of others we may be working with in the organisation too. And that's difficult, isn't it? That's a sort of piece of personal kind of insight work almost that we don't always make room for too, I think. I don't know if you've come across that in your own life, how hard it is to say no when everything in you wants to say yes.
It is, and it is really difficult, and it's something that I'm working on. And I think also it's really worth recognising that some of those expectations and some of those things actually are imposed on us from external bodies. And I will go back to Baton Disease. So when I went to BDFA, we were taking a drug through the NICE highly specialised technologies appraisal process, and everyone laughs. So I'm just going to say it again. I worked 7 days a week for 2 years, almost, and it almost cost me my marriage. And everyone laughs, and because I was working to someone else's timeline. And because the if I had said, no, actually, I want Sunday off, I can't do that paper because that's the only day I've got to do that. I can't do that paper because I've got, I need to have Sunday off. What would that have done? I'd missed, it was an all or nothing kind of situation.
And these are the awful conflicts, aren't they, that sometimes leaders, yourself and your officers, are put into, with where I often think sort of rare leaders are a bit like middle managers in a way. You've sort of got your community underneath you who are going, oh, we really need this is great, could you do that? And then you've got trustees or external bodies going, well, we really need you to do this for us and we need it by this time. And you're squeezed on both sides, aren't you? And that capacity to sort of get your elbows out and go, actually, this might not be possible in exactly the way you want it. It's a really hard thing.
It's really hard. And you have to weigh up the cost benefit of not doing a thing as well as doing the thing. And also recognising trustees often in rare organisations also have a background of lived experience. That's why they've got involved. They may even be founders. And have moved up to that trustee level rather being the founder chief exec, and that's an interesting dynamic also to be juggling if you're in that situation. So it's and also then we have that founder. What if you are the founder chief executive? Whether you're paid or unpaid, that's another thing, because there's a personal integrity and personal stake. It was your brainchild, you wanted to make this happen for a specific purpose, and it's a really hard thing to do. And I haven't got a magic wand. I haven't got it's something I'm still working on.
You've got a magic wand, because there isn't a magic wand, Sam, and that's really important for people to know if they're listening to this as a rare leader, and if whether you're in that space where you're going, yeah, great, I'm really on top of this, or whether you're in a space where you're going, oh my God, what have I done? What on earth was I thinking doing this organisation? That there isn't a magic wand, but it's a sort of almost bringing yourself back to yourself now and again, and just sort of checking in with yourself and going, actually, what do I need in this situation? Am I overextending myself? And having to accept sometimes one's own limitations, which again is something I think those in the rare space find really hard, because I think most rare leaders have become rare leaders because they didn't want to accept the limitations that healthcare or others were imposing on them. And of course, it's a great quality, but it can also sort of flip around and turn against you and sort of bite you on the bum a bit if you find it hard to be someone who goes, yeah, actually, maybe I've hit a bit of a limit, either physically or emotionally, because it goes against the grain.
Yeah.
You're someone as a rare leader who wants to push against limitations. So it sort of feels counterintuitive, but is so helpful and important if you can allow yourself to do that now and again. Because, I know, you shared very openly about how what you were giving to, your organisation was almost cost your marriage. And I think many other rare leaders listening to this would recognise the stress and strain that it puts on relationships in a family. And, at the end of the day, most people are doing these roles because they want to make things better for families like their own. So how important it is to not sort of, sideline one's own family and family relationships, but how hard it is when you're pulled in different directions
Absolutely.
by these conflicts. So it feels like there's lots of things that do make rare leaders a little bit different, but it's something about you were talking too about the isolation that many rare leaders work within, and I think it's really important that we talk about running an organization as work, whether you're doing it paid or unpaid, whether you're doing it as part-time or whether it's your full-time role. It is work. You're working for your rare organization, your community. And as you said earlier, a lot of that work is done in isolation, or it's done after a full-time job, or fitted around caring responsibilities. And that adds additional pressures too, doesn't it? There's not that sort of neat separation between work and life that others might have if you're commuting or you've got a job in, I don't know, a shop or a bank or something like that. Is different. And I wondered what you do to sort of try and keep a bit of separation between your work and your life. I mean, you're going, oh, don't ask me that question, Kym. None.
I think we can safely say that this is another thing at which I am rubbish.
That's so human, isn't it, Sam? Because that's the idea. It's not a magic wand, it's a work in progress.
Yes,
We
it is
all
definitely
know
a work in process.
we have to put things down and pick things up, putting my work down, picking up, but it's a work in progress. It's never done in that regard.
No. And I think that's really an interesting thing, the never done. So the working out what you really need to do today, this week, this month, in order to progress you, because the list is so huge. The list is so huge. And if you want to run a really good, well organised, up to the hilt governance, really compliant with all the whistles and bells organisation, you're never going to be done. 7 days a week is not going to cut it, even if you're working 20 hours. It's just not feasible for a very small organisation, a very small team. So I think actually being realistic about what you can achieve. I'm really trying to work on the stopping. One of the things that I have done for myself is I have not got my Gene People emails. Don't listen, trustees. I have not got my Gene People emails. Stop recording. I deliberately don't have them on my phone.
Yeah.
I only put the link on if I'm going out of the office and out and about for my office, home office, which is here, out and about for the day on Gene People Work, and then I put it on my phone. But I don't have it habitually on my phone. And that was because in a completely different setting, I was available 24/7. So maybe it's me. And I removed that. That's been a big help. Shutting down the laptop every day and actually turning it off is a real discipline to get into, because if you leave it chugging along in the background, it will start pinging and you'll be automatically drawn to it.
It's so tempting, isn't it? And it's so sort of seductive to just sort of pick up your phone and go, oh, just have a quick look at email, or just have a quick look at
Yeah,
chat,
and
or just,
it's bad.
I'll just see what's happening. And it's so compulsive because you care. And we all have a bit of FOMO as well, don't we? A bit of sort of like, oh God, if I don't kind of pick this up, what will happen? Or, oh, I need to be involved with that. So that kind of deliberately saying, I am stopping now, and having almost some physical action, like you're saying, like closing the laptop down, and also not having notifications on your phone. I mean, we all know not having phones by the bed is a really good idea as well. But, I know that's tricky for some people if your air condition means that, yours or someone else's means having that contact's important. But at least having some sort of boundary so that you say you turn off notifications or something like that. I'm a terrible one. And again, I don't know why I'm saying this on a podcast, because everyone's not going to know how to get me now. But there's something about being asked in a certain way that can tweak our help buttons. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm a terrible one. If someone comes to me a certain way and says something like, oh, Kym, it'd be really great if you could do this thing for us, because you just be really great at it, and we'd love you to do this. And there's a bit of me that goes, oh, you're asking me so nicely, and you're saying it in all the ways that make me feel good about myself, and I'm going to find myself saying yes before I've really thought this through as to whether I've got time capacity, or this is really what we should be doing with our time as an organisation right now. So I've developed little stock phrases, which I'm really worried about sharing, because you all know when I'm using them.
Oh, no.
I say something like, that's a really lovely idea, and I'm really honoured that you've asked me. Can I think about it for 24 or 48 hours and get back to you? Because I think we all have that sense, don't we, when you get that kind of inner, slightly conflicted, panicky feeling. You sort of want to do it, but you don't want to do it. You're not sure, but they're asking you in such a great way. And before you know it, you've gone, yes, I'd absolutely love to do that thing. Yeah. And there's something about putting a little check and balance in there and having a phrase that you can insert, I think, is really helpful. I don't always practice it, I have to say, but it's back to that work in progress idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important to remember, we don't have to answer emails as soon as they come in.
Yeah.
It's someone was saying this to me on a completely different topic, and it was something, but you don't have to answer the email the second it comes in.
Yeah.
You can finish what you're working on. Yeah,
and we all know that, don't we? We all sort of have that. We are aware of that, but I'm also aware for myself when people say something like, oh, thank you so much for responding so quickly. And I always think, oh, yeah, look at me, I'm so responsive. And then you're back in that loop again, where suddenly you're trying to keep on top of things all the time, in a way, as you said earlier. There will always be things that are not done in a small organisation. There are always things that we know we should be on top of, that should be done, that need updating, that need doing. And they are all having to be work in progress. And I think there's a sort of culture we need to grow, and I think is there a bit and is there in pockets of the rare space, which is about how we are supportive friends to each other rather than those sort of critical friends or competitive friends. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier. It's really quite difficult sometimes when we are all in straitened situations with resources and finances and competing for funding, how we sort of look after each other and form communities of leaders that can be there for each other. When in the background too, there's the sort of difficulty that sometimes we're often competing for the same pots of money or the same mentoring or the same support. It's a really difficult tension, isn't it? And I think in a way we have to acknowledge it. That's the way it's detoxified a bit. Can we speak how we ally with each other rather than compete with each other? And it's not it's not easy. It's not straightforward, particularly in a small space like the rare space.
Yeah. And I think that competitor friend kind of, collaborative partner kind of space is really difficult. And it is, as you say, really difficult at the moment when things are so tight. It sounds very out there to go, well, you try and come from a place of abundance. Actually, When we're competing, and that's fine. And when you think about it, you don't actually know who you're competing against.
Yeah.
So if we think about the medicines industry and grants from the medicines industry, okay, you kind of know you're going to be going up against health organisations, not necessarily rare, not necessarily genetic organisations, but health in its most widest sense. But if you're thinking about external funders, if you're thinking about the big trusts and the charitable foundations, you could be up against anyone and you have no idea. So just ignore it. You can only do the best applications that you can do.
Yeah.
And the trick is to have a pipeline of those going. So it's not one or nothing. It is a pipeline. So you've probably got that sustainability and stability. But you don't know who you're actually competing against if you're looking outside of the health space to funders that are wider. So why worry about it? You just have to worry about your own game and what you are putting out there, and if it's the best that you can do. I would say at the moment what I'm noticing is that funders are increasingly looking for collaboration, as well as community feedback, no matter where they're from, much more receptive to collaborative funding proposals. So, and just put it out there, I'm happy to consider almost any proposal. If it's not for us, it's not for us. But I also know people. So if people who are watching this think, how do I start that kind of collaborative process? I wouldn't know who to contact. Very happy to have that conversation. I'm really truthfully very happy to have that conversation, because it's becoming a real sought after piece of the puzzle for funders.
Yeah. And it's something we say to communities a lot, isn't it? That we are stronger together. When you're living with an impactful condition, we are stronger together by meeting up with others who are finding their own ways of living in the world with that impactful condition. And I think it's true for rare leaders too. We are stronger together as leaders and as organisations. And one of the things that really impressed itself upon me was a while ago we ran a series of programs called Rare Resilience programs for rare leaders, where we've got groups of between sort of 8 and 12 rare leaders together to sort of share the challenges and the emotional impact of the work on themselves. And I think people were a little bit nervous at the start about sort of being open about, how they were doing and how things were in their organisation. But what was so rewarding was how many of those real leaders carried on with their sort of small mini communities of leaders after that programme finished. Because just like living with a rare condition, isolation is one of the most testing aspects. I think it's one of the most testing aspects of being a rare leader too. That thought that, I don't know, are they doing it better, or they seem to have a handle on this, or how do they do that, or that sense of being very responsible for an organisation and a community and wanting to do your best, but not always being sure what that is or how you get there or what that looks like, and being able to share the challenges and the uncertainties too, which of course mirror the uncertainties that are so endemic with so many rare conditions. So it helps mitigate, I think, managing the uncertainties of leadership, to be talking to others and saying, well, how do you do this? And did you struggle with that? Or I have no idea what that means. What's that all about? It's okay to say that to each other. I think we can have a lot of fantasies, can't we, that other people have it much more nailed than we do. And actually, we're all sort of making our way as best we can with the knowledge and expertise we've got, and we'll be better at some things than others. So what I always sort of, when I come to the end of podcasts, Sam, and I hope this has sort of been useful for anyone who is, a rare leader and just sort of thinking, this, it's not an easy job. And, hopefully listening to something of us shooting the breeze about it helps mitigate that isolation and gives you a bit more confidence. But what would you want to leave rare leaders with in terms of looking after their own mental health and well-being. I think we've talked something about, we're works in progress, both ourselves as people and leaders and our organisation, they're works in progress. There's something about being good enough, not perfect. But what would you have liked someone to say to you when you started out in the rare space as a leader? What would have been helpful?
I think, that's a really difficult one. So I think if someone had sat me down and said, this is going to be, and I always, these organisations that I'm working with, and have been from 2018 are, this is a high spot in my career. I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, yes, I've done some things. I've helped some people, and that's
made a difference.
I've made a tangible difference in this way, and I can see it for this community. And I think, what would I have wanted to set them to say? Do you know what? I'm going to be you're going to tell me off after. I would not change how hard it is. I would not change that. What I would do sooner in my first organisation is I would have found my support network faster. And the support network came from other allied sister organisations which have a similar biological basis for their conditions. But also I was very fortunate to have a non-managerial supervision session once a month when I was at BDFA, and that was a lifeline. And it was with someone who knew the community and also vitally at that time understood the drug process. And that was, because I could sit there and I could say, I have, why am I feeling like this? This is just wrong. So identifying that support network.
And then have someone else say to you, I think the reason you're feeling like this, Sam, is da 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 da.
Yeah.
And that seems completely normal. And how can we help you get through this?
Yeah.
It's so reassuring, isn't it?
It is really reassuring.
You're not going mad. There's nothing wrong with you. It is intrinsically challenging. And how do you pick your way through it with the help of someone?
Absolutely. And I also want to there was something that you were saying about the sharing and not is everyone up on their game and everything. So I am a serial trustee. I was a trustee of the Royal Air Forces Association, which has nothing to do.
That's such a great phrase. I'm a serial trustee.
I've always had trusteeships alongside my paid career, and I was speaking to she's no longer there, but the company secretary, head of corporate governance, and she had come from a really hard corporate background. And she said, I love this sector. I ring someone up and I say, have you got XYZ policy? And it's in my inbox within 5 minutes.
There's a commitment to help and care and support.
No matter what. No matter what. Yeah, obviously you're not going to share your list of funders. That would be foolhardy. But, that, do you have a whatever?
Yeah. There's a willingness to step in and go, yes, of course, if I can help, or I have something that you can use, or anything to help you. It's a bit like we all move up as one moves up, isn't it? As we all get better at doing that. One of us gets better at doing this stuff. We all get better at doing this stuff. I think that's really helpful. I think the thing I'd want to leave people with is, and I've blatantly nicked this phrase off one of my colleagues, and you know who you are, so thank you for letting me use it. But it's that phrase of, don't burn yourself out on the candle of your own flame. And I always think that's such a wonderful phrase, because we all want to burn bright for our communities, don't we, Israelis? We want to be that sort of beacon of hope. Oh my God, I've got fireworks on my screen. How exciting. You can't see that if you're listening to this podcast, but it was very exciting. But it's something we have to hold in mind, and I try and hold in mind that, we want to burn bright, we want to be those beacons of hope, but we can't burn ourselves down in the process, because our organisations need us and our families need us. So it's back to the idea of looking after our own mental well-being is also looking after others too, in the process. So that's a great phrase, I think, that I've borrowed and I'm passing
Definitely.
on. And I think the other thing is find ways that you can press pause where you need to. You offered up some ideas about turning off notifications, turning off your laptop, but also those phrases where you can put a stopgap in, where you're a bit unsure if you should be doing or stepping into a commitment of work or time. That sort of little phrase of, oh, it's a great idea, or I'm sorry, I'm not quite available now. Could I get back to you? That just helps you pace yourself as a leader. And I think that pacing is really important. Hopefully we're in for marathons and not sprints in that regard. But I'm going to finish in a minute, Sam, but I'm going to ask you the last question, which I ask all my guests, which is, and please only share as much as you want to, but what do you do to look after your own health and mental well-being?
Well, I mentioned the non-managerial supervision when I was at BDFA, and I think most of the Gene People community know that I had a recent bereavement my stepfather passed away from a rare genetic cancer. So we've been through that lived experience, living it in the past 12 months, which has been quite hair-raising. So what do I do? I'm very fortunate. I live 5 minutes away from the sea. I can go down to the seafront. That's really good for a number of reasons. We've got a very broad horizon here in Bexhill. It's really spectacular, and I really value that. So that's something that I do. I probably drink too much wine, if we're honest about it. There is you have to weigh up the iron content against how much alcohol units you're actually doing at some point. But so I guess I keep saying I need the iron. But it's a thing. It's that ritual at the end of the day, which probably isn't quite so good for you, but it has a purpose now and again. And I'm actually seeing a therapist. I think it's really important to be open about this, because there is no shame in it. Why would I not see someone? Why would I try and work this out by myself when my brain is already overloaded and tired?
I often say to people, it's a bit like if you had a pain in your leg, you'd probably go and see the doctor or a physio. And if you have a pain in your heart or your mind, well, that's what counsellors and therapists are there for. It's just exactly the same principle. Don't struggle on. And it's surprising how even a little can make a big difference, I think, in that regard. So thank you so much, Sam. It's been such a pleasure having you on today. And we're going to put some resources and links in the podcast little captiony bit afterwards, just to point you to some organisations that can also support you as a rare leader. And of course, we'll include Gene People and Rareminds and how to contact both of us in that regard. So thank you so much, Sam. And I know you've been struggling with a cold today, so double thanks from me too for being on. And I hope you're going to go off and have a bit of downtime.
Yes, I will. I will stop talking for a while, yes. But thank you very much for the invitation. It is really such a huge topic, and we could have spoken about many, many things for hours, I think. But hopefully this is the first of many, and hopefully people will reach out and get some support when they need it. I'm very willing to be a listening ear at any time.
Thank you so much, Sam. We'll speak again. Bye for now.
Thank you.